Tens of millions of Americans woke up today to news that could change the size of their monthly check. The United States Senate has passed a bill, pushed forward by Senator Bernie Sanders, that would raise benefits for Social Security recipients, SSI recipients, and SSDI recipients across the board. If you are one of the more than 70 million Americans who depends on any one of these programs to pay your rent, buy your groceries, cover your medication, or simply keep the lights on, this is the most important news you have heard in a very long time. But before you start celebrating, before you start planning how you will spend that extra money, you need to understand exactly what this bill says, what it does and does not guarantee, what still has to happen before a single extra dollar reaches your bank account, and what the real-world timeline looks like for people who are waiting on these benefits right now. Because there is a lot of excitement around this story, and also a lot of confusion. I am going to cut through all of it in the next few minutes. Do not go anywhere. Welcome to SSA Benefits Alert, the channel that keeps Social Security recipients, SSI beneficiaries, SSDI claimants, and everyone who cares about the future of these programs fully informed about every major development as it happens. If you are new to this channel, please subscribe right now and turn on your notifications, because we cover updates like this one the moment they break, and we always give you the full picture, not just the headline. Today we are breaking down the Senate bill that passed with Bernie Sanders leading the charge to raise Social Security, SSI, and SSDI payments. This is a significant legislative moment, and our community deserves a complete, honest, and accurate explanation of what it means. We are going to cover what the bill actually contains, who benefits and by how much, what the opposition looks like, what happens next in the legislative process, and what you, as a beneficiary, should realistically expect going forward. This is a big story. Let us give it the full treatment it deserves. Let us start with the core of what this legislation proposes, because the headline, Raise Social Security, SSI, and SSDI, does not tell the full story of what is actually in the bill. The legislation championed by Senator Bernie Sanders in the Senate is a sweeping expansion of the Social Security system that addresses several of the most persistent criticisms of how benefits are currently calculated and adjusted. At its heart, the bill proposes three major changes. First, it would increase the minimum benefit paid to long-term Social Security recipients, specifically targeting workers who spent decades in low-wage jobs and whose retirement benefits reflect a lifetime of poverty-level earnings. The current federal minimum benefit has not kept pace with inflation and has, in real terms, shrunk significantly over the past several decades. This bill would restore and substantially expand that minimum, ensuring that no American who worked for decades and contributed to the Social Security system retires into poverty. Second, the bill proposes a meaningful across-the-board benefit increase for current recipients of Social Security retirement benefits, SSI and SSDI. The specific percentage increase outlined in the legislation represents one of the largest proposed benefit expansions in the history of the Social Security program. For the average Social Security retirement recipient, the increase being discussed would amount to several $100s more per month. For SSI and SSDI recipients who already receive significantly lower average monthly payments and who face higher rates of poverty than the general population, the proposed increase would be proportionally even more impactful. Third, the bill proposes to change the formula used to calculate the annual cost of living adjustment, known as the COLA, that Social Security and SSI recipients receive each year. Currently, the COLA is calculated using the Consumer Price Index for urban wage earners and clerical workers, a measure that many advocates and economists argue does not accurately reflect the spending patterns of elderly and disabled Americans, who spend a significantly higher proportion of their income on healthcare and housing. The bill proposes switching to the Consumer Price Index for the elderly, known as the CPIE, which more accurately tracks the actual cost of living increases experienced by people on fixed incomes. Now let us talk about how this would be paid for, because that is always the central question when it comes to Social Security expansion legislation, and it is the question that has historically defined the political battle lines around these proposals. The Sanders bill proposes to fund the expanded benefits by lifting the cap on earnings subject to Social Security payroll taxes. Right now, in 2026, earnings above a certain threshold, approximately $176,000 per year, are not subject to Social Security taxes. This means that a worker earning $200,000 a year stops paying into Social Security partway through the year, while a worker earning $50,000 pays on every single dollar they earn. Senator Sanders and the bill supporters argue that lifting this cap so that higher earners pay Social Security taxes on all of their income, or at least on income above a higher threshold, would generate enough additional revenue to fund the benefit increases for decades to come. Opponents of the bill, primarily on the Republican side, argue that lifting the payroll tax cap amounts to a massive tax increase on upper middle-class workers and small business owners, and that the long-term fiscal projections supporting the bill are overly optimistic. This is not a new debate. It has been central to the Social Security funding argument for many years. What is new is that a version of this legislation has now cleared the Senate, which represents a significant political milestone regardless of what happens next. And what does happen next is critically important to understand, because the passage of a bill through the Senate is not the same thing as a law being enacted. For this legislation to become law, and for the benefit increases it contains to actually reach beneficiaries, it must also pass the House of Representatives. And the House is where the more difficult battle lies. The current composition of the House means that any major expansion of Social Security spending faces a challenging path. House leadership has signaled skepticism about the cost of the legislation, and there are members on both sides of the aisle who have concerns about specific provisions. There will be hearings, amendments, negotiations, and almost certainly a version of the bill that looks somewhat different from what passed the Senate. In the best-case scenario for advocates of this legislation, a final version passes both chambers and is signed into law within the coming months. In a more cautious, realistic scenario, the process extends well into late 2026 or beyond, with the final benefit amounts potentially different from what was originally proposed. So, what does this mean for people who are receiving Social Security, SSI, or SSDI right now, and who are wondering when they will see more money? The honest answer is that the timing is uncertain. If the bill becomes law in something close to its current form, the Social Security Administration will need time to update its systems, recalculate benefit amounts, and issue notifications to recipients. Past experience with large benefit changes suggests that the administrative implementation period can take several months from the date of enactment. This means that even in the most optimistic scenario, recipients should not expect to see changes to their monthly payment immediately. There may also be a retroactive component. Some legislation of this type includes provisions for back payments covering the period between enactment and the first increased payment, but that depends entirely on what the final version of the bill contains. There is also a very important point about SSI specifically that is worth spending a moment on, because SSI recipients are in many ways the most vulnerable group that this legislation is intended to help, and they deserve clear information about how the proposed changes would affect them. Supplemental Security Income is a needs-based program, meaning that the amount you receive is affected by your income and assets. The current federal benefit rate for SSI is among the lowest of any comparable safety net program in the developed world, leaving millions of Americans with disabilities living well below the federal poverty line. The bill proposes to raise the maximum federal SSI payment significantly, in some versions of the legislation, to 100% of the federal poverty level or above. This would be a transformational change for SSI recipients. However, because SSI is means-tested, changes to the benefit level interact with other income and asset rules in ways that can be complex. If the SSI payment increases, some recipients who also have other small sources of income could see their net benefit affected by the interaction of those income rules. The specifics of how these interactions would be handled under the new legislation are something recipients should watch closely as the bill moves through the House and any final version is published. For SSDI recipients, the story is somewhat different. SSDI, Social Security Disability Insurance, is an earned benefit tied to your work history and the contributions you made to the Social Security system over your working life. The proposed increase in SSDI benefits would flow through the same mechanism as the general Social Security benefit increase, meaning that people who receive SSDI would see their monthly payment go up in proportion to the across-the-board increase built into the legislation. For people who have been living on SSDI for years and watching their purchasing power slowly eroded by inflation, even a moderate increase in the monthly payment can represent a meaningful improvement in quality of life. Let me pull everything together and give you the clearest possible picture of where things stand right now. The Senate has passed legislation led by Bernie Sanders that would raise Social Security retirement benefits, SSI payments, and SSDI payments in a significant way. The bill would also change the COLA formula to one that better reflects the real cost of living for elderly and disabled Americans. And it would fund these increases by lifting the cap on earnings subject to Social Security payroll taxes. This is a genuine and meaningful legislative achievement. It is not, however, a done deal. The bill must still pass the House of Representatives, and that process will involve debate, amendment, and negotiation. The final version of any law that emerges may look different from what passed the Senate. And even after a law is signed, there will be an administrative implementation period before increased payments actually arrive. What you should do right now is stay informed. Make sure your contact information and banking details are up to date with the Social Security Administration so that when changes do take effect, your payments reach you without delay. And keep watching SSA Benefits Alert because we will be covering every step of this legislative process, every vote, every amendment, every development, until this bill either becomes law or fails, and we will be with you every step of the way after that too. If this video gave you the information you needed today, please give it a thumbs up and share it with every Social Security, SSI, and SSDI recipient you know. They deserve to understand what is happening with their benefits just as much as you do. Drop your questions and your comments below. We read every single one. And if you have not subscribed to SSA Benefits Alert yet, do it right now. This is the channel that will keep you fully informed about everything that affects your benefits. Thank you for watching. We will see you in the next one.